Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. I've got sound here. And this is a pre-recorded session for Management 3603. And I'll post this over at Canvas. This is for August the 29th. When I was putting down my schedule, putting all the information out there, I simply forgot that we have convocation on Wednesday the 29th. And it's just such a rush afterwards that what I've done over the past few semesters when I've done a hybrid class is I've just simply made this. I've done a pre-recorded screencast. And so that we have the time. Now, I know that next week, the Monday is Labor Day. And so what I'm probably going to do is make Wednesday, just that one Wednesday, I'm probably going to make that a ground-based session. I forgot about today, and these are just scheduling things. And we're going to get to that point where Mondays will be the ground-based and we'll be rolling along, but it's just kind of the quirkiness of the schedule. I will send out an email over once I've finished this screencast, and I'll send out an email explaining this. I'm going to have to do it with another class as well. And again, my apologies. It's just the way these things tend to work. And I found that having gone through convocation to get back, get out of the robes, etc., I don't want to run late, and we have some material to cover. So I thought it's just going to be easier to just simply do the pre-recorded screencast. Now, I will probably spend some time in my office Wednesday since I'm going to be over there, and then I will also be over there Thursday. So, and I'll get word out to all of you and remind you about this via email. Okay, well, let's take a look, and I've gotten rid of that invitation. Okay, and so we're ready to go. We've gotten that out of the way. Let's take a look here at the modules. Of course, we've gone through all the business about the materials that are here in terms of getting started, etc. Now, we looked at Module 0, and I asked you to prepare for Module 1 by reviewing some of the Microsoft Excel resources in the Getting Started module and in Module 1. And up here, you'll remember there are some resources that I encourage you to go see. And they are here's one, how to use the solver tool in Excel. This is a YouTube video. It'd be good to go. Microsoft Excel optimization. This is a PDF from MIT's Open Courseware. A solver in Excel from the Easy Excel site. What if analysis, and it also talks about the scenario manager and goal seek. And so that's important. Those are some resources that will help supplement what we do here. Now, I do want to take for just a moment and talk with you about the business data roles. And so this helps us put what we're doing into perspective. All right? This is from a professor, Daniel Egger, over at Duke University. And he had gone to large companies and had asked them, well, also he did a survey of business people of all types of firms and asked them what kinds of data, what types of data capabilities do students need to have, and so as he got responses, all right, he began to build this I guess one could say a sets of categories. Now, I'm going to go in here, all right, and as you look, you're going to see that all of the things that we do in the BISS courses prepare you essentially to become a that you will possess the skills of a entry-level business analyst. So that gives you a really powerful tool, because if you can figure out what's the question, that helps you as you begin to try to discern, well, what's the answer? And so we have a definite approach here, or an overarching approach with these courses. And in this course, Intro to Management Science, as we talked about in the last screencast, the very first one, we differentiate between problem solving, okay, and decision making. Problem solving is preceded by decision making, and we use these tools, the goal seek, scenario manager, the optimizer, in order to look at possible outcomes based upon our choices. And the text talks about the choices we have that are controllable and uncontrollable. Now, I'm going to go back to the module for just a minute. All right. And here in Module 1, I also had said here are some other resources for you to look at Excel Easy Solver, and to look at what is known as GRG nonlinear, and then Excel, then the evolutionary tool. When we use Excel Solver, which is an optimization tool, one of the decisions we have to make is, what do we think of how do we assess the nature of the data that we have? And what that means is exactly what we have here in terms of the nonlinear. And this is, if we don't believe data are linear, like, for example, as interest rates go up, housing sales go down, then we'd use the nonlinear. If we have absolutely no idea and we're trying to build a model of the data, we would use the evolutionary. And we'll see these as we get further down the course. Now, it's important for you to see I've got Nolan Plastics upload here. Okay, this is due on the 31st. And you'll notice that I also have the Nolan Plastics key. And this is here. So all you have to do is download the Nolan Plastics key to your desktop, save it, and then load it over here, because that was part of the workshop that we were going to work, that we have. And then you have a couple of exams that are due from the Anderson text. And we'll go back over here to Vital Source. And this is the Anderson text. And you have you have an exam over chapter 1 and chapter 2. And over here again, in this chapter, they talk about problem solving and decision making, quantitative analysis and decision making. And here we use Nolan Plastics, where we utilize the break-even. We did break-even analysis. And so one of the things we try to do, management science emphasizes that, as decision makers, we always try to find out, is there a model out there that applies to this situation, so we don't reinvent the wheel? If someone's already figured out how to configure a network with certain characteristics, we're not really smart if we don't use that tool. So that's an important piece. And we also saw some management science techniques, and you'll see all of these. We're going to work with them, and you've probably worked with, in production class, you've probably done some project scheduling. That's PERT CPM, program evaluation review technique, and the critical path method, where we start at an outcome that we desire and we walk back what has to happen step by step. So we start and work backwards. Then we identify what we call a critical path. That's a series of things that need to happen. And critical path is the one that takes the longest, or the one that costs us the most money, or some combination of that. And we look for that critical path so that we make sure that if we have other resources, we can take those slack resources and apply them to the critical path. And so there are many of these techniques are here. Inventory models, back if you took BISS 1123 with me, we studied, we took a look at using the economic order quantity. These are tools to get us where we need. Now let me say this and you'll hear me, pardon me, let me emphasize it and you'll hear me say this over and over and over. Garbage in, garbage out. So if you provide data, if the data you collect are spurious or they're no good, you're going to get result sets, you're going to get data, you're going to get mathematical models that maybe it all looks pretty and it adds up, but maybe it's not what you're after or what you need. And then you have the chapter 1 summary and the glossary, and then you have some problems there. And here's one, and here's appendix to 1.1. And this is using Excel for break-even analysis. And this is Nolan Plastics. And we try to figure out, of course, the total cost equation. Try to find the total cost. Then we try to find break-even price, break-even units, break-even fixed costs. And we've worked with this before. Okay, so that really is chapter 1, and they walk us through how that model is set up. And they walk us through the steps on how to do it. We talked about this. I showed you how that's done. Using the goal seek tool. Okay. Now, we're going to look ahead to module number 2. There's no class Monday, which is Labor Day. What I probably will do, however, is a screencast in lieu of Labor Day, because we've got some material to cover. One of the things I'll do is I'll review Nolan, and we'll preview PAR Incorporated, which is in pages 32 to 54 of your textbook. And so let me pop over here. And we come down here to a simple maximization problem. And this company has, if you'll see, as you take a look here, they make golf equipment and they make a golf bag. And here are the following operations. These are the things that are broken down. This is one of the reasons, for example, back in BISS 1123, I spoke with you about, you remember we had that problem with the pharmacy, and I asked you to walk through the steps of the data flow for that process. Here we see cutting and dyeing, sewing, finishing, inspection, and packaging. And this is the PAR Inc. course. And here they've got their production requirements. Now we begin, okay, to work on problem formulation. And the book walks us right through the process. Let me say again, decision making is not an exercise in, quote, right or wrong, black or white. Now, if someone comes to you as a business owner, for example, and says, here's a way for you to cheat on your taxes, that's black and white. If you don't want to do that, because you'll get caught, and then there'll be problems. But in the decisions like, should we offer a new a product line? Should we locate a facility in a certain place? Should we purchase a competitor? All of those kinds of things. We have a way and an approach to do it. If you're an athlete, for example, and you play quarterback, you know that your footwork is absolutely essential. If you don't have the good footwork, you won't throw the ball effectively. Same thing for a baseball pitcher with gripping a baseball to get a slider, a curveball, and so forth. So we start with problem, and we try to just understand the problem, and then we try to describe the objective. And then we begin to identify constraints. I have students oftentimes who'll tell me management science is just a bunch of boring old equations and this and that. Well, okay, but you as a manager live in a world full of constraints. And if you don't understand the key constraints in your company, then you're not going to understand how well or not your company can deal with an external environment, much less have excellence inside of its operations. Now, we define the decision variables. And here they give us the number of standard bags and the number of deluxe bags. And now you'll see we begin to build, and we want to get a total profit contribution. And we see the 10S and the 9D. And then we build our equation. And we end up with the constraint, each one of them, and here we see that we've built a mathematical model. At the start of chapter 1, we talked about the types of models. When we use a model, if it's iconic or if it's a scale model, we do so to try it out, to see what it's like. One of the great advances for us in architecture and engineering is computer-aided design and computer-aided machining. We can simulate. There are companies that can simulate for you a production line if you intend to develop a product. We put people are going to be airline pilots, commercial airline pilots. They go through a simulator. So when we have this ability to build a mathematical model is extremely important, because then we can plug things into the model and we can see what types of outcomes we would get given constraints and our objectives. And so here we see the complete mathematical model for the PAR Inc. program, now, for their problem. Now, good managers go through all of these steps, either on the back of an envelope or in their head. And this is why experience is so critical. If you understand the business and the industry that you're in, then you'll understand and you'll be able to come up with that type of mathematical model. You'll do it intuitively. You'll understand the business. And so we have this course to emphasize to you that you don't have to go out there and feel like you're completely lost. We have a path, a map, a template, if you will, that guides us through that process. Now, PAR Incorporated is a linear programming model because it assumes that the data are distributed in a linear fashion. Now, I want to talk about this business about a graphical solution procedure. All right? You can utilize the algebra to come up with solution points if you want to depict them. And I'm not sure that it's a really great use of your time for a very simple reason. Solver is intended to express that to you in terms that you can understand. And so it's nice if we do this because it shows us a picture of and we're looking at the sewing constraint, okay? And we see feasible solutions. So anything in here is feasible, is workable. Same thing here in terms of finishing constraints. And we see that the data are linear because they lend themselves to that type of distribution. Now we find we come down to inspection and packaging. And we look at the feasible, and here is the combined constraint graph. Now, I don't spend any time on having you do this. You've had calc, you've had stat, you ought to be able to do it. But I don't know that it's of that much value for your value, simply because when you use Solver or a tool like that, it will compute for you and analyze for you those constraints, but they'll lay them out in a way that's more quickly understood. There are folks who teach this class, and I can guarantee you they've made students do these over and over and over. And I think they're great, but they're not of much value. Now here we see, based on all of those constraints, we start to look at the number of deluxe bags and the number of standard bags. How many can we produce? And here we get the feasible region. Notice, okay, that this is linear, although it's got some bumps. But anywhere in here, we get a feasible solution. And this is the profit line for a given combination. And we solve and come up with an optimal solution. The whole idea of these graphs was basically for us using a Cartesian plane to come up with an optimal solution. Solver and tools like it will do that for you based on the numbers you put into it. So you'll be working on PAR Inc., and they give us some notes on graphing lines. And then they give us a summary of the graphical solution procedure. Now, one of the things we want to look at, and we'll talk about this some more next week, is this notion of slack variables. We want to find out, based on the mathematical model we've created, which says we're going to use so much time for cutting and sewing, etc. Do I have slack variables? And do I have people or money or material or some combination of them that I can take and apply to some other part of the task? This is very similar to what we were talking about PERT/CPM, critical path method. So we try to find out, do we have any unused hours? Well, why would that be important? Well, if we're not using all those hours for sewing, In other words, if we have 600 available, but we only use 480, then we may need to consider and cut it back so we save those 120 hours. Or we do have the option, perhaps, to move to one of these other tasks. And here we see, looking at the slack variables, we see the maximization. That's our objective function, i.e. the answer. And you're going to find, when we do optimization, we try to do one of two things: minimize costs, maximize profits, minimize inputs, maximize outputs. And that pretty much runs us through chapter 2. And now again, PAR-Inc., which is one we'll be dealing with, walks us through that issue. Now, the PAR-Inc., I give you a place to upload it, okay? And you'll see, I guess you should see this, you're seeing my screen. I have a key for PAR-Inc. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to preview PAR, okay? And then we'll also talk about M&D chemicals, and we'll preview them. And for M&D chemicals, we're going to look at the left-hand side and the right-hand side. That's what the LHS and RHS means. And in this event, now I'm going to say, okay, what does that look like if we increase processing time 19% per product, and if the time available is decreased by 8%? What does that look like? And I have a key here for M&D, and next week we'll take a look at that and we'll go through it. And then, of course, upload it here. And then we have for chapters 3 and chapter 4. Now, I'm going to open up Excel, and I want to talk about this for just a minute. When you're working in the lab or you're somewhere else, it may be necessary for you to set up the solver tool, okay? Now, as you can see, if I click on data, the data tab, you're going to see that I have the solver. I may need to add this because this is a machine I have, because the one they gave me blew up. So I'll have to add it here. Now we do have on the data, we have the what if analysis, scenario manager, goal seek, a data table. We won't be doing any of those, but we don't have solver. So I'm going to click on File, and I'm going to come down here to Options, and I'm going to click Add-ins. And I'll see all those add-ins. Those that are active are up here. If I have any that are inactive, are here. And I'm going to click on the solver add-in, and I'm going to click Go, and I'm going to go ahead and I get this old window, Analysis Tool Pack. I don't want the VBA, your currency, and I want solver. So I'll click OK, and I will have added them, and they'll be here. So we'll do this in class, or you can follow these instructions. Again, when you open up the VMware at school, or if you have Excel on your computer that you use, it's again, you're going to click File. Pardon me. You'll click File, and you'll go down to options. You'll click on add-ins. Now, as you can see, the analysis tool pack and the solver add-in are now operating. I've added them in, and then you see all the inactive tools here. We'll go through this a couple of times. You'll go, oh, okay, I've got it. Now, I'm going to open Solver up for just a moment so you can see. Remember, we had those mathematical models. Well, we're going to feed that into the Solver program. And so they tell us, okay, set an objective. And then they say, is this a minimization problem, maximization, or do you have a target value? And then we'll have some variable cells subject to the constraints, and we put in those constraints. Now we'll have to choose, is this simplex LP, is it evolutionary, is it GRG nonlinear, what is it? And then as we go through these cases and we work with them, we're going to see we're going to see how those are all laid out. And that pretty much takes us through week number 2. Again, we won't have class on Labor Day. Probably what I will do is some kind of screencast that you can look at, and then we'll have a live screencast session on Wednesday. Okay, again, tomorrow, August the 29th, convocation is at 10 o'clock. All right, this will be over at the this pre-recorded screencast will be over. Will be in Canvas, and I'm going to be around the office tomorrow afternoon, but I'll do a pre-recorded screencast. I'm not going to do a live screencast. Okay? Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop the sharing. Okay? And I'm going to